I'm Elizabeth, 42, a project manager in Denver, Colorado. And that Christmas, I thought I was ready to reconnect with my family. I was wrong. After a brutal day wrestling deadlines at work, I drove to my mom's house carrying a tray of homemade cookies, hoping for a warm evening. But when I walked in, my mom looked at me, smirked, and said, flat out, "There's no room for you here." My brother nodded, standing there while the room buzzed with guests. People I didn't even know, laughing and clinking glasses. I froze, feeling like I'd been slapped, but I didn't say a word. I just smiled, set a small, neatly wrapped box on the table, and whispered, "Open it tomorrow." They couldn't wait. The second I turned to leave, I heard the wrapping paper tear followed by my mom's scream echoing through the house. What was in that box? A gift they never saw coming. And that was just the start. If you've ever walked away in silence instead of begging to stay, you'll understand this story. Hit follow to see what lesson the box I left behind taught them. Growing up in our small Denver suburb, I was always the odd one out. My mom called me weird for spending hours with my nose in books, while my brother was the golden boy tossing footballs and charming everyone at family gatherings. By high school, I was pulling straight A's, stacking up scholarships. But to my family, I was just too serious. My mom would roll her eyes when I talked about college plans, saying, "Why can't you be normal like your brother?" He'd laugh, throwing in jabs about my nerdy dreams of working in tech. I'd bite my tongue, hoping one day they'd see me for who I was. When I landed my first job as a project manager at 25, I thought things might shift. I was pulling in a solid salary building, a life in Denver, but the gap only widened. My mom started calling with requests, not small ones. First, it was $3,000 to cover her car payments after she forgot to budget. I wired the money, thinking it might earn me a shred of respect. It didn't. Then came the utility bills, always paired with a story about how she was struggling. I paid those too, dipping into my savings while she hosted lavish barbecues for neighbors I barely knew. My brother was worse. He'd call all charm asking for loans to fund his latest get-rich-quick scheme, a food truck one month, a drop-shipping business the next. I sent him $5,000 once, then another $2,000. But the money vanished, and he never mentioned it again. I kept giving, telling myself it was for family, hoping they'd finally see me as more than a resource. The biggest sacrifice came 5 years ago when I was 37 and my daughter was 12. My mom had her heart set on a plot of land in the Colorado mountains, a half-acre perfect for a vacation cabin. She called it a family retreat, a place where we could all come together. I was skeptical her track record wasn't great. But my daughter deserved memories with her grandma, and I wanted to believe we could be a real family. So I bought the land $30,000 every cent from my savings. I insisted on keeping it in my name just in case, but I let my mom use it. She built a small cabin, nothing luxurious, but it became her obsession. She'd host weekend getaways, inviting my brother, his friends, even distant cousins. I'd get a text maybe saying, "It's too crowded this time, Beth. Too crowded for the person who paid for it." I'd drive up sometimes hoping to join, but there was always an excuse. Once I showed up, one announced with my daughter, thinking we'd surprise them. My mom barely looked up from her card game, muttering, "You should have called." My brother smirked, saying, "This isn't really your scene, is it?" I swallowed the hurt, drove back to Denver, and told my daughter we'd make our own memories. But it stung. Every check I sent, every bill I paid chipped away at me. My mom would brag about the cabin to her friends, calling it her dream, never mentioning who made it possible. My brother would post photos online, grinning in front of the cabin while I was left out of the frame. Looking back, I see how naive I was. I kept giving, thinking it would earn me a place in their lives. I paid their phone bills, their groceries, even my mom's credit card debt, $10,000 over the years, but respect that was never on the table. They didn't see me as their daughter or sister. I was their safety net, their bank account, nothing more, and they never once said thank you. But that Christmas Eve, I walked into my mom's house in Denver with a flicker of hope. I'd been up since dawn, wrestling a project deadline at work, my inbox flooded with urgent emails. Still, I'd carved out time to bake a tray of gingerbread cookies, my daughter's favorite, thinking, maybe this time we'll have a real family night. My daughter was with me, her jacket tossed over the couch as we stepped into the living room. The place was overflowing, laughter echoing off the walls, string lights twinkling, and a table piled high with food, roast turkey, mashed potatoes, the works. I scanned the crowd, expecting at least a nod or a smile. Instead, my mom caught my eye, her lips curling into that same familiar smirk. "There's no room for you here, Beth," she said, her voice slicing clean through the chatter. "We've got important people tonight. Daniel's colleagues, real movers and shakers." I froze, the tray of cookies heavy in my hands. My brother Daniel leaned against the counter, a beer dangling from his fingers, his grin sharp as glass. "Yeah, Beth, it's kind of a VIP thing," he added, dragging out the words like he enjoyed every syllable. The guests, mostly strangers in pressed shirts and flashy watches, turned to look. Some chuckled, others whispered, eyes darting between me and the untouched plates. One woman, her wineglass tilted, muttered, "Who brings cookies to a dinner like this?" The laughter that followed hit like a punch to the gut. My face burned, not just with embarrassment, but from years of being sidelined. My mom, Margaret, didn't even blink. She just turned back to her conversation, brushing me off like I was some stranger who'd wandered in uninvited. I placed the cookies on a side table, my hands steady despite the tight knot in my chest, and forced a small, stiff smile. "Got it," I said quietly but firmly. I turned to leave, my daughter trailing close behind, her steps quick and silent. I could feel her unease like a stretched wire between us. Outside, the Denver air was cold and sharp, biting at my cheeks as I slid into the driver's seat. Chloe climbed in beside me, her hands twisting in her lap. For a moment, she said nothing. Then her voice came, soft but edged with anger. "Mom, I saw how they looked at you. Grandma didn't even try to make space. She laughed when you walked away, like it was some kind of joke. And Uncle Daniel, he was just fueling it, smirking like he'd won." I gripped the steering wheel, eyes locked on the dashboard, the city lights reflecting against the windshield. Chloe's words cut deeper than Margaret's. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about my daughter, 17 years old, watching her mom get humiliated in front of a room full of strangers. I tried to shrug it off, saying, "It's just how they are, Chloe." But she shook her head, her voice rising. "No, Mom, it's not okay. You do everything for them. You paid for Grandma's cabin, her bills, her whole life, and they treat you like you're nothing. I saw her roll her eyes when you walked in, like you were a burden. And Daniel, he just stood there, acting like he's better than you. I hate it." Her voice cracked, her eyes shining in the dim light. I reached for her hand, squeezing it, but my thoughts were spinning. She was right. I'd spent years telling myself I could handle their insults, that it was worth it. For family, for Chloe. But standing there, tray in hand, hearing Margaret's voice ring across the room, seeing Daniel's smug smirk, it hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just another slight. It was a public declaration that I didn't belong, that all my sacrifices meant nothing. And worse, my daughter had to witness it, her trust in her family breaking right there amid their laughter. As we drove home, the city lights smeared past, and I kept replaying it all. Margaret's practiced smirk, Daniel's sneering VIP thing, and the guests' casual, cruel laughter. Like I was the punchline to a joke no one bothered to explain. It wasn't just a single moment. It was a lifetime of being pushed aside, of being told I didn't belong. I thought about all the times I'd bitten my tongue, smiled through their snide remarks, and paid their bills just to keep the peace. But what kind of peace was that? What kind of family mocks you in front of strangers, making your own child feel like her mother's worthless? Chloe broke the silence again, her voice steadier this time. "Mom, you don't deserve that. Nobody does. They act like they're better than you, but they're the ones living off your money. It's not fair." I nodded, my jaw tightening as her words sank in. She wasn't just hurt, she was angry. Angry for me, for us. And that anger sparked something deep inside me. I'd always told myself I was doing this for Chloe, to give her a family, a connection. But what kind of connection was it? One where we had no seat at the table, where we were mocked to impress people who didn't even know our names. By the time we pulled into our driveway, the weight of that night sat heavy in my bones. I looked at Chloe, her face set, her eyes fierce with a loyalty I'd always given but never received. "You're right," I said quietly but firmly. "This isn't okay." And as we sat there, the cold pressing against the car windows, I knew I couldn't just let it go. When we finally reached our Denver apartment, long past midnight, sleep wasn't even an option. My mind spun with images. Margaret's sharp smirk, Daniel's smug VIP thing, the guests' laughter chasing us out the door. I'd told myself for years I could take their cruelty. But this wasn't about me anymore. Chloe had felt it too. I needed someone who could cut through the fog, someone honest. So on Christmas morning, I called Rachel, my colleague and closest friend. We met at a cozy downtown coffee shop, its windows glowing with holiday lights, the air buzzing with shoppers snatching last-minute gifts. She was already there, sipping her latte, her curly hair pulled into a loose bun. "Beth, you look like you haven't slept in days," she said, setting her cup down as I slid into the booth. I didn't bother with small talk. I told her everything. Margaret's loud, "There's no room for you here," Daniel's smug remark about it being a VIP thing, Chloe's voice trembling as she described watching her mom get humiliated. Rachel's jaw tightened, her fingers tapping the table in anger. When I finished, she leaned in, her tone low but cutting. "Beth, that's not just rude, it's cruel. They've been using you for years, taking your money, your kindness, your sacrifices, and this is how they repay you? They don't deserve you." Her words cracked open a truth I'd buried under layers of excuses. I'd always believed family meant enduring the mess, giving endlessly because that's what daughters are supposed to do. But Rachel wasn't letting me hide behind that anymore. "You bought that land for Margaret's cabin, didn't you?" she asked, her eyes sharp. I nodded, my throat tight. "And her bills, Daniel's loans, you've poured thousands into them. What have you gotten back?" "Nothing but disrespect." "You're not their bank, Beth. You're their daughter, their sister. Why are you letting them walk all over you?" She paused, then asked the question that changed everything. "What's stopping you from taking it all back?" I stared down at my coffee, the steam slowly fading, and something clicked. Taking it back. The land, the cabin, the years of being their safety net, it was all mine to reclaim. 5 years ago, I'd spent $30,000 of my savings on that half-acre in the Colorado mountains, keeping it in my name for a reason. Margaret treated it like her personal estate, hosting her gatherings while Daniel lounged there with his friends, never acknowledging who made it possible. The bills I'd covered, phones, groceries, Margaret's credit cards, all added up to tens of thousands. Daniel's failed business loans were just another drain. Rachel's words didn't just sting, they ignited a fire. They didn't deserve any of it. Not the land, not my money, not even me. When I got home, my resolve grew stronger with every step I took. Chloe was in her room, headphones on, rehearsing lines for her school play. I didn't want to pull her into this, at least not yet. Through the open doorway, she caught my eye and gave me a curious look. "You okay, Mom?" she asked. I nodded, my voice steady. "I'm fixing this," I said. She smiled, a flicker of pride lighting her eyes, then turned back to her script. That was all the fuel I needed. I sat at the kitchen table, pulling up the deed for the mountain land. The number stared back, $30,000, paid in full, my name and mine alone. I thought about Margaret's precious cabin, her so-called pride and joy, built with my money but never once shared with me. I thought of Daniel, smirking at her gatherings, never offering a word of gratitude. My hands were steady as I dialed my lawyer, Sarah, a no-nonsense woman I'd worked with on a contract dispute years ago. "I want to sell the land," I told her firmly. "The cabin, everything." Sarah didn't press for details. "Your name's on the deed, so it's simple," she replied. "We'll draft a transfer document to reassert ownership, then list it. I already know a buyer interested in mountain property." By noon, she'd emailed me a formal notice of intent to transfer and sell the land, every line sharp and binding. I read it slowly, my heart pounding with a rare kind of clarity. This was my boundary, my line in the sand. But I wanted more than a transaction. I wanted Margaret and Daniel to feel the weight of what they'd done, to face it in front of each other. So I printed the document, folded it neatly, and placed it inside a small gift box wrapped in shiny red paper, tied with a gold ribbon, Christmas style, to make it sting. On a small card, I wrote just a few words. For you, Mom. Open it after I'm gone. That evening, I drove to Margaret's house alone, pulse thrumming in my ears. The lights were on, but the wild chaos of Christmas Eve had faded. Inside, it was quieter, just family. Margaret, Daniel, and my Aunt Patricia sat around the dining table with plates of leftover turkey and pie, probably swapping gifts or gossiping. Their laughter floated through the doorway, the kind I'd never been part of. I stepped inside, the box firm in my grip, and the room fell silent. Margaret looked up, her lips tightening. "Beth, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone clipped like I was intruding again. Daniel leaned back, that same smug grin spreading across his face. "Back for more? Thought you'd had enough last night?" he drawled, his voice thick with mockery. Patricia, stirring her cocoa, gave me a soft smile, trying to bridge the tension. "Good to see you, Beth," she said gently. But I didn't answer. The air was heavy, their arrogance thick in it. I stepped forward, my voice calm but cold, and set the box on the table in front of Margaret. "A Christmas gift," I said, meeting her eyes. "Open it after I'm gone." Daniel snorted, rolling his eyes. "What's this supposed to be?" "Another peace offering," he muttered. Margaret's fingers hovered over the box, suspicion flickering across her face. I didn't wait for more. I turned and walked out, closing the door softly behind me. As I reached my car, I heard the faint rustle of wrapping paper. Then Margaret's voice, sharp and impatient. "I'm not waiting for her." A second later came the sound of tearing paper, followed by her scream. Raw, furious, unmistakable. Daniel shouted something, but I didn't turn around. I slid into the driver's seat, my hand steady, my phone buzzing in my bag. It was Rachel. "Did you do it?" Her message read. I typed back, "It's done." For the first time in years, I felt light, free not just from their demands, but from the endless burden of trying to prove I was enough. The next morning, my phone lit up with notifications, missed calls, angry voicemails from Margaret, Daniel, even my father, John. Their voices spilled into my inbox like old debts I refused to pay. I ignored them all, the fire from last night still steady in my chest. I wasn't ready to hear their excuses, not after a lifetime of being their afterthought. But around noon, a sharp knock echoed through my Denver apartment, freezing me in place. When I opened the door, they were all there, Margaret, Daniel, and my dad, faces drawn tight with fury and desperation. I hadn't expected them to come here. My small 2-bedroom apartment, the one I'd built into a quiet home for Chloe and me, suddenly felt too small for their storm. Margaret stood in the doorway, coat buttoned to her chin, eyes red and blazing. Daniel loomed behind her, jaw clenched, hands shoved deep into his pockets. My father lingered near the hall, shoulders hunched, that familiar silence weighing heavy. Chloe was at a friend's house rehearsing for her school play. I was grateful she didn't have to witness this. I stepped aside, keeping my voice steady despite the knot tightening in my stomach. "What do you want?" Margaret didn't sit. She stormed straight into my living room, clutching the crumpled deed transfer, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Beth, what is this nonsense?" she snapped, thrusting the paper toward me, her hand shaking with rage. "You think you can just take my cabin, my home? After everything I've done for you, this is how you thank me?" Her words came like knives, accusations polished over years of manipulation. Her face twisted with disbelief like I'd stolen something sacred. I stood by the couch, arms crossed, unmoved. "It's not your home, Margaret," I said evenly. "It's mine. I paid for it. $30,000, my savings. Every cent." Daniel stepped forward, his voice booming, the same false indignation I'd heard my whole life. "You're doing this now? After all we've been through as a family? He jabbed a finger toward me, his face flushed. You owe us, Beth. You've got the good job, the money. You think you're better than us, but you're nothing without this family. I need that land for a deal. My investors are counting on it. If you sell, I'm ruined, and you're going to fix this. It was the same tired performance, entitlement disguised as guilt. I'd heard it all before. The food truck. The app startup. The endless loans all vanished with excuses. I met his glare head on, my voice calm but sharp as glass. I don't owe you anything, Daniel. Not anymore. I've paid Mom's bills, covered your debts, carried this family for years. And what did I get in return? You laughing at me, you shutting me out, you humiliating me in front of strangers, making Chloe watch her mother get treated like she's nothing. My heart thudded in my chest, but I didn't flinch. I turned to my father, desperate for even a flicker of understanding, for once, for him to see me. But he just stood by the window, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the floor, silent as always. Margaret slammed the deed transfer onto my coffee table, the sound echoing in the small room. You ungrateful child, she spat, her eyes blazing. After all we've done, raising you, giving you a family, you pull this stunt? That cabin is my legacy, and you're tearing it away out of spite. Her words dripped with venom, but they slid off me. I finally saw her clearly, not as a mother protecting her home, but as someone who had built her comfort on my sacrifices without a shred of gratitude. I stepped closer, my voice low and steady. Your legacy? I paid for it, Margaret. I paid for it, Margaret. I paid for your phone, your groceries, your credit card debt, tens of thousands over the years. I paid for Daniel's failed schemes and his so-called investors. And what did I get? You laughing at me in front of your guests, making my daughter feel like her mom's worthless. That's not family. That's not love. I paused, letting the silence stretch between us. I'm done being your bank. Daniel lunged forward, his face inches from mine, his voice trembling with anger. You think you can just walk away? I need that land, Beth. My investors will sue me if this deal falls through. You're going to keep helping us, or I'll drag you through court. I'll make sure everyone knows what a selfish... Go ahead. I cut him off, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. Try it. The deed's in my name. My lawyer's already finalizing the sale. You're not getting another cent from me. Margaret's face went pale, her lips quivering with barely restrained fury. And you, Mom, I continued, you can keep your legacy. But it won't be built on my back anymore. That's when my dad finally spoke. His voice was soft, but every word landed heavy. Beth, we're family. This isn't how families handle things. Can't we work this out? You don't have to sell the land. His plea cut deeper than Margaret's anger or Daniel's threats. He'd never mocked me, never taken my money, but he'd also never defended me. Not once. He'd stood by in silence, watching me carry the weight of their cruelty. I looked at him, my chest tight with a mix of love and hurt. Dad, I wanted a family. I tried for years, giving, paying, hoping you'd see me. But all I got was a room full of people who don't. I can't keep doing this. Daniel threw up his hands with a scoff. You're so dramatic, Beth. Playing the victim, fine, but you're not getting away with this. I'll fight you in court, whatever it takes. You can't just cut us off. His words were hollow, and he knew it. Good luck with that, Daniel, I said evenly. The paperwork's done. The buyers lined up. You're out of moves. Margaret's eyes darted between us, her sharp confidence fading into something brittle. My father's shoulders slumped, his silence heavier than any argument. The room was still, the weight of my choice pressing down on all of us. I didn't wait for more. I walked to the door, held it open, and said firmly, You can leave now. Daniel stormed out first, muttering under his breath. Margaret followed, head high but eyes avoiding mine. My dad lingered for a moment, one hand brushing the door frame. But he didn't look back. When the door finally closed, the sound was final. I sank onto the couch, staring at the coffee table where Margaret had slammed the deed transfer. A strange calm washed over me. This wasn't just about land, it was about reclaiming my life. For me and for Chloe. By the first week of January, I was back in touch with my lawyer, Sarah. She'd found a buyer for the half-acre in the Colorado mountains, a developer eager to turn it into a rental property. The cabin, Margaret's so-called legacy, was part of the deal. I want to finalize it, I told Sarah over the phone, my voice steady. The paperwork moved fast. By mid-January, the sale was complete. $35,000 landed in my account, a small profit 5 years later. I didn't feel triumphant. Just free. That land had been a chain tying me to a family that never saw me. Now it was gone. I didn't hear from Margaret or Daniel directly after they left my apartment, but Sarah warned me they might try something. Sure enough, in early February, I got a letter from a lawyer I didn't recognize. Daniel had followed through on his threat, filing a claim to block the sale, arguing the cabin was family property. Margaret's name was on it too. Her signature scrolled next to his. The claim was flimsy. My name was the only one on the deed, and Sarah had every document to prove it. They don't have a case, she told me, her tone matter of fact. This is just noise. She was right. By late February, a judge dismissed their claim in a single hearing. The land was mine to sell, and it was already sold. I learned through a mutual acquaintance that Margaret and Daniel were forced to move out of the cabin within weeks of the sale. Without it, they had no choice but to downsize. Margaret, who'd always prided herself on her mountain retreat, rented a one-bedroom apartment in a run-down Denver complex, her savings too thin to afford anything better. Daniel, with his investors long gone, moved in with her, scraping by on odd jobs. My dad, John, stayed with them, his pension barely covering their bills. I didn't feel sorry for them. They'd built their lives on my money, my sacrifices, and now they were facing the reality of living without it. Clue and I made a decision that same February, no more contact. I'd spent years chasing a family that didn't want me, and I wasn't going to let Chloe grow up thinking that's what love looked like. We blocked their numbers, Margaret's, Daniel's, even me dad's. It wasn't easy. My dad's quiet plea from that day in my apartment lingered, his sad eyes flashing in my mind. But I couldn't keep opening the door to people who only hurt us. Chloe agreed, her voice firm, when we talked about it over dinner one night. They don't deserve you, Mom, she said, her fork pausing midair. We're better off. At 17, she saw it clearer than I had for years. With the money from the sale, I paid off the last of my credit card debt, a lingering weight from years of covering Margaret's bills. The rest went into a savings account for Chloe's college fund. She was applying to schools, her eyes bright with plans for theater programs. I started saying yes to things I'd put off for years. Weekend hikes with Rachel, a pottery class I'd always wanted to try, even a solo trip to the coast that spring. For the first time, I wasn't living for anyone else's approval. My apartment, once a place I'd barely noticed, became a real home. Chloe and I painted the walls a soft blue, hung photos from her school plays, and filled the shelves with books we actually wanted to read. I didn't check on Margaret, or Daniel didn't ask around about them. The acquaintance who'd mentioned their move stopped bringing them up, and I was grateful. But one day in March, a letter arrived forwarded from Sarah's office. It was from my dad, handwritten, the ink smudged in places. He didn't ask for money or mention the cabin. He just wrote, "I'm sorry I didn't see you, Beth. I hope you're happy." I read it once, then tucked it into a drawer. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because I was done carrying their weight. I wished him well in my own way, but I wasn't going back. By summer, Chloe and I were in a new rhythm. She landed a lead role in her school's spring play, and I was there in the front row, cheering louder than anyone. Rachel came too, her laughter filling the auditorium. My life wasn't perfect. There were still late nights at work, still bills to pay, but it was mine. I wasn't the daughter who paid for everything, the sister who fixed everyone's messes. I was just Beth, and that was enough. Looking back, that Christmas, when Margaret said there was no room for me, changed everything. It wasn't just about losing a seat at their table. It was about finding my own. Chloe and I built something better, something real. We didn't need their approval, their cabin, or their version of family. We had each other, and that was more than enough. The Christmas lights twinkled in our Denver apartment, casting a warm glow over the small tree Chloe and I had decorated together. It was December 2024, a year since the night I walked away from a family that never made room for me. This Christmas was ours, just the two of us, and it felt right. Chloe, now 18, was humming a holiday tune, setting out plates of homemade cookies and hot cocoa on our little kitchen table. The air smelled of pine and sugar, and for the first time in years I felt at home, not just in this space, but in my own skin. We'd spent the day wrapped in blankets, watching old holiday movies, and laughing over Chloe's attempts to bake a gingerbread. She'd gotten flour on her nose, and I couldn't stop smiling as she recounted her latest theater rehearsal. Her hands waving dramatically. This was our family now. Small but real. No crowded parties, no sharp words, just us. I'd bought her a new script book for her college auditions, and she'd gifted me a mug with World's Okayest Mom painted on it, her teasing grin lighting up the room. We didn't need a big celebration. We had each other, and that was more than enough. Looking back, I realized how much had changed. I used to think family meant giving everything, my money, my time, my heart, even when it left me empty. I'd poured so much into people who never saw my worth, believing that was my role. But their selfishness cost them everything: the cabin, their pride, their place in my life. I learned a hard lesson: taking without giving back leaves you with nothing but loss. Cherish the people who lift you up, the Onis who show up for you because they're the ones who matter. Chloe and I built something new this year, something ours. We didn't need a seat at anyone else's table. We made our own, filled with love, laughter, and the kind of warmth I'd spent years chasing. To everyone who's followed this story to the end, thank you. Your time, your support, it means the world. If this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button and join us for more stories about finding your strength and building your own path. Here's to new beginnings, to tables where there's always room for you. Joan Voy Jang Ki.